and some of them at 4 5/8 and 3/4. But those rates are not going to stay long if the 10-year U.S. Treasury note moves back over 3%. It traded over 3 today at 303, end of the day about 3%. And I had forecast that by the end of the year, I think it will probably be around 4%. And that's going to put a real crimp in people refinancing. And then you have a lot of people who are losing their jobs. Then you have a whole other group who had these pick-and-pay option-arm loans who were underwater because the value of their home fell, and these higher rates aren't going to be very helpful. Most of the loans that are being made are being guaranteed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, but most of them are FHA loans. And they're just going to continue to do what they're doing. And then I think the figure FHA is working with is $300 billion. And they'll probably, by the time, over the next 2 years, will go up to $1 trillion. And so the whole thing is the house of cards, and the FHA loans are going to the 650 FOIC rating holders, so to speak. And they are not very good risk. They're really subprime loans. At best, Alta loans. And, the trouble they got in already, and 2 years from now, we're going to have the same problem all over again.
Well, basically, first, what's going to happen as far as my understanding, the Federal Reserve is actually buying up some of these Freddie Mae and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans. In other words, these are people who are in trouble as far as they can't meet their loans, and so the government's coming in and buying them up. Are they buying them up? Are they refinancing them? What are they doing with the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? Because we're on the hook for this. This is almost, $5 trillion worth of home loans. Almost, I think about 40% of the home loans are Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And now, of course, if they've made bad investments, why the taxpayers are going to have to pay for that. So what are they really doing? Are they renegotiating the loans, or what are they doing? Do you have any idea?
Well, with the FHA loans, they're being renegotiated. And with those lower interest rates, people were able to make new loans, whether they needed them or not. Some have to reset, some don't. And then also, I don't know what their position is on this buying of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac paper. I didn't know that they were involved in it, but I do know that they have been buying Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac bonds. So, it depends upon what angle you're looking at this from.
Well, apparently, despite the fact that they talk about new transparency in government, we keep reading the reports that are put out by the Congressional Oversight Committee. They put out their third report now, and they say they can't find out what's happening to all this money. I mean, this is a committee, a panel actually, appointed by the Congress to find out what they're doing with the TARP funds, the Troubled Asset Relief Program funds, and they just, the government just won't tell them. They give them all these obtuse answers. They ask them this long question. They say, we are investing. Where did the money go? Who got the money? We're investing this to stabilize the economy. Well, that's all well and good. That's rhetoric. But what did you do with the money? And they just won't answer the questions. Why are they refusing to answer the questions of the Congressional Oversight Panel that's trying to find out what happened and what's really going on?
Well, I think it went to the banks and it went to foreign banks. So, that's a combination of both. It probably went this way. The loans went to Citibank and Goldman and Morgan, and they in turn probably with a conduit to lend the money to, the European Central Bank or the Bank of England. We don't know because all we can do is guess. And, this puts them into a very difficult position because what happens is people like me get on the air and say, look, what did you do? And they won't tell you. So that gives me license to say, well, this is what they did. Disprove it.
Well, because my fear is that they are certainly, we seem to be much more concerned about the stability of foreign banks and the profit of foreign banks and the bonus of foreign bankers than we are with the American people who are losing their homes and losing their jobs and losing their life savings. I mean, I would think our loyalty would be to the United States, not to foreign banks. Why don't their governments lend out, certainly bail out their banks? Why do we have to bail out the banks throughout the world?
Because the banks throughout the world, most of them, are controlled by the same group of people. So they want the banks to survive because they're their banks. And so that's why they're being lent money. And it's as simple as that. Most people don't understand that, but they don't understand what we're talking about in the first place.
Well, I think
because it is arcane. I mean, if you go to university and take a master's or a doctorate, they don't get into this very deeply.
Well, here's the thing is J.P. Morgan's running full-page ads in the Wall Street Journal saying, look, we've got lots of money to loan. And I think they do, after all, when you can leverage, 40, 50 to 1, you've got $1 in deposit, you can lend out 40 or 50, you can create money out of nothing. Of course they have money to loan, but they're lending it at such exorbitant rates that they're destroying our economy. We saw recently they lent, Southwest Airlines, $300 million, but they lent it at 10.5% interest. I mean, this is truly usury. And they said, well, Southwest Airlines was lucky because the other airlines are going to have to pay a lot more than that. Well, you can't operate because they're not making that much money and they're already in trouble. And then, of course, the banks are intentionally holding back the money. But they can't let the American people know that they are intentionally creating this crisis, because then we might get a little angry with them, because it's the same thing that banks did during the 1800s and during the 1900s, create good times by putting a lot of money out there, then contracting the money supply and taking away people's life savings, their homes, their farms, their industries. It's like deja vu all over again.
That's right. And, again, reverting back to our philosophy on this, they're just borrowing time. And this borrowing of time is important to them because they are going to have to coordinate the downfall of the world financial system. And they need a war to do that as a cover because they don't want to get hung. So I think they're going to start a war in the Middle East, Israel and the United States against others. And once that gets going, they'll throw their hands in the air and say, oh my goodness, this war has broke the financial system, and we're going to have to try to save it. But there's this giant war effort, and we have to take care of that too. And so the solution is more central control of everything and a one world currency.
And I hope our listeners will go to augustreview.com. That's augustreview.com, and get the list of the members of the North American group of the Trilateral Commission. What do you find? Why, first there, and these 87 people, 87 Americans, Morgan Stanley, J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, the small group of people who control our nation.